see, here we go. Thank you very much for your testimony. I have two quick questions. One is related to the governor, but I'll ask you that one second. Those of us who live in my community, my district downstate, can you share very graphically and explicitly why this should be a concern of ours?
I could try to do that. One of the things that I find very ironic is that as far as our food, the food crops we grow and the animal crops that we make, that we grow for the food that your people will eat, those are really restricted. It's really restricted as to what chemicals we can use in the production of those foods. They're trying to protect people, the consumer, from getting anything that would be obviously poisonous or bad for people. So there's a lot of law about that. But the water that we would be feeding the animals or putting on the crops that might have been exposed to these chemicals through exposure from the hydrofracking, nothing seems to be worried about. Nobody seems to be worried about that. It seems to be okay to have the chemicals in the water, but not in the food. Not in the fertilizer we put on or pesticides we put on. You have to be careful there, but not in the water. That seems very strange to me.
Could I add one thing to that? Well, actually two things. One is we know of some cases where cows have been exposed and quarantined, so they weren't allowed to be sent to market. Then we looked into how long they would have to be kept before they could be sent to market. And actually there's no data on that. The only agency that does that said that they really just have to make up the numbers in that case. There's no scientific basis. They just say, okay, maybe 6 months, then you can send them off to slaughter. Second point is, in a number of cases, animals that have died from exposure, they of course can't be sent to market, but they can be sent to rendering plants and fed to chickens and to fish. So even though you're not getting the meat directly, you can get it indirectly in the feed.
So Governor Cuomo seems to be very committed to hydrofracking. And has he had the benefit of this science and information that you're sharing, and why would he be so hell-bent on it?
Well, I would just like to say, is he here today? Where is he? He has not responded. I've written personal letters to him. I've emailed. I've called. My husband has too. I'm sure many other people have. We get a letter back saying, thank you for contacting our office. I'd like you to direct you to my website for more information about my campaign and what I do. What kind of response is that? This is a really important public health issue. I sent the paper, opening myself for conversation. We get nothing back. So I don't know the answer to that question.
Last spring, there was a letter that was sent by medical professionals, and it was asking the governor and the Department of Health there was a series of asks in this letter. Some of them came from recommendations from the EPA that the Department of Health should be co-lead agent in the SGIS process. That didn't happen. The other thing that was asked for in that letter was a health impact assessment. There was a follow-up meeting that took place with the Department of Health, which is under the direction of Andrew Cuomo, and there was no push by his office to get the Department of Health to do a health impact assessment or even look at it. We were basically ignored by the Department of Health. The Department of Health did a presentation for the governor's panel on drilling, and at that meeting, they were asked why they didn't do an analysis, not even a health impact assessment, which is a whole process, but an analysis of health impacts, and the response was, no one told us to. There's only one person that tells them what to do. So that's the letter that I mentioned in my testimony that came out in October by another whole series of health associations and doctors, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the New York State Nurses Association, and the Medical Society in New York, all are asking for a health impact assessment. And that again was ignored. It got put into the budget, as you know, on the Assembly side, and you all attempted to get it into the budget on the Senate side, and you know more about what happened with that than I do.
And I'll certainly talk about that after my colleagues have a chance to ask their questions.
So,
Senator?
I just want to thank you so much, and if there's any such communications that you can share, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.